Hey, everybody out there in Cryptid Land. Thanks for joining me and my buddy Dirty tonight. We're going to be interviewing Bill Konkolesky. He is from Michigan, and he is the director of MUFON from the state. And we're going to be talking about some really cool stuff. Aliens, UFOs, and some abductions. So join us tonight on the Cryptid Quest Podcast. Hey, everybody out there in Cryptid Land. Tonight we have Bill Konkolesky with us. He is the director of MUFON for the state of Michigan, and we are honored to have him here. How you doing, Bill?
Dynamite. And yourself?
I'm not doing bad. I'm not doing bad at all. So, as the director of MUFON, what all entails? What all comes with that job?
Okay. So if anybody out there is unfamiliar with MUFON, what we do is investigate UFO reports. MUFON stands for the Mutual UFO Network. The group's been around since 1969. I have not been around since 1969, but I've been a member since 1993 and director for the state of Michigan since 2004. So that's 21 years and some change now. The organization's got over 5,000 members in over 40 countries, and we collect literally thousands of UFO reports every year and investigate them. That's the important part. We investigate them. Michigan tends to get about 200 a year, so there's always a lot on our plate.
Oh, wow. So you get about 100 reportings a year up in Michigan?
About 200.
Oh, 200. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So 1 to 2 a week. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. That keeps you damn busy, I bet.
Yeah. And we can, the point about this is that people report things that they don't recognize. Mm-hmm. So we help them if we can, and we can identify about 90% of what comes into us. But that still means that there's that little sliver of really interesting things we can identify.
Okay, so when you say you can identify 90%, does that mean you're saying, well, okay, you saw an airplane, or
many times it's an airplane. Drones, you may have remember recently in the news, drones was a big deal. Yeah. Chinese or sky lanterns, weather, shooting stars, Starlink satellites, just all sorts of things and a lot of times people will show us photographs and say, I didn't see anything in the picture, but look at this weird light or this weird object in the picture. Can you identify it? And a lot of times it's things like birds, or it's some sort of glare or something like that.
Okay. So what are some of the more interesting reports that you've gotten over the years?
Well, that depends on if you're just talking strictly about, say, UFO sightings, or if you're talking about the stranger, more personal contact cases. But I'll at least start with this. When I joined in the fall of '93, it was just a few months prior to a really big event in the state, March 8th, 1994. This was an event that was recently actually covered by Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix. If anybody wants to go looking for more information there, we had over 300 witnesses to this single night of UFOs, and it was caught on radar. There were police sightings, and more than 60 people called 911, the same number that you call when there's an intruder in the house or you fall and you can't get up. People were reporting UFO sightings. This was on the southwestern side of the state in the Grand Rapids area. And the National Weather Service got really good radar on it. And so, when, I had just started, I was just a few months into MUFON at the time, and this happened. I'm like, oh my gosh, is it always going to be like this? And not so much, but it's not that, it's not that it's ever boring, but that was a big thing to step into in case that personally really left an impression on me. A gentleman called, this was March of 2005. He was very deeply upset, anxious, nervous. You could really hear it in his voice. And he talked about this 2 days of UFO sightings that he had. And I went out with a couple other investigators to his home And his sightings were from September of the previous year. So this is 6 months later. He's still worried about what he saw. And the first night of his UFO sightings, he was driving home. He was on a narrow road with tall trees and a winding road. And as he came around the corner, he suddenly found himself under a giant black triangle. And he said it had white lights at the vertices, big red light in the center. He could tell it was solid because he couldn't see through it. And it was motionless, silent, just hovering there. And when I asked him about how big it was, when he said giant, he said, well, it's about the size of a football stadium. So, and you could really see how deeply it was affecting him. This wasn't anything he was boasting about. He was terrified of this thing. So anyway, so he goes home. The next day in the afternoon, he's waking up from a nap about 3 p.m., looks out his window and sees what looks like a car driving across the tops of the trees at the edge of his property. And he looks and the car doesn't have any wheels, and it's about the size of a car, moving about the speed of a car. And as he watches it fly by, it's got 3 little portholes on it. He obviously can't identify it. He takes himself a few minutes to calm himself, and then he walks downstairs. He was on the second floor of his house, walks down into his kitchen and sees that it's now parked in his backyard, and like right outside the window.
Holy cow.
So you ask all the basic questions like, did you get a picture of it? And he said, well, I didn't know if it would interpret that as a weapon. He said after it was parked outside for about 10 minutes, then he goes, I didn't know if it was like broke down or what it was doing. And it didn't want to interpret, him aiming a weapon at it. So he didn't take a picture. And then so I said, did you call anybody? And he's like, no, it could probably detect any communications. And so it would think that I was calling in for reinforcements. So I said, okay, so what did you do? And he goes, I sat in the couch and I watched it for an hour until it got up and it flew off. Yeah, so I had red lights inside the craft, whatever this was. And he said he could detect like the smoke roiling around and there was some sort of shadow inside. And then, so I said, hey, let's go out in the backyard and see if there's any indentations in the ground. Well, March in Michigan can mean snow. And yeah, there was about 2 feet of snow in the guy's backyard. So I said, it's fine. Can come back in a couple months. And he said, nope, this is your problem now. I do not ever want to think about this again. It's yours. Like as if he was exercising it from himself and dumping it on me. And so I said, okay, sure, that's fair. And oddly enough, a few years later, somebody came into one of our state chapter meetings with these sketches of this UFO he saw down in Oklahoma, and it was the same exact object. I was like, wow. Because the guy saw was kind of out of the ordinary, even for the out of the ordinary. Because you know discs and triangles and other basic shapes like a cigar shape or a square, but this guy saw this weird wedge-shaped thing, and this other guy drew the exact same thing. So I was like, I got goosebumps when I saw those sketches.
Wow. So now talking about the shapes, I hear the black triangle, and it always seems to be about the size of a football field. I hear that a lot. So what do you think is the most commonly reported UFO shape that people tend to see?
Well, if they're seeing it at a distance, it's always just going to be a point of light, typically, and typically only a single point of light. But the closer sightings are often disc-shaped. Now, but there's a great amount of variety in there too. For example, on that March 8th, 1994 event that I just mentioned, some people were seeing disc-shaped, bright, glowing, solid colored lights. Like they'd see a red light and a yellow light and a green and a blue. And then other people were seeing discs that had a variety, silver metallic looking discs that had a variety of colors around the perimeter of them, but all sort of disc shaped.
So do So when you go out and investigate sightings, do you guys ever use any kind of equipment to try to pick up, like, well, I guess, like radiation or magnetic field or anything like that?
We have all of that, and it's not unless you can go right to the spot while it's still hot, so to speak. Do you think you're ever going to really get anything? The most interesting thing that I'd seen is we helped a local group get started with their crop circle investigative group. Not to say that they needed help because they were really good at it, but we had some equipment and we had the bodies to help them go on investigations. And sometimes in these crop formations, yeah, it would mess with all of your electronics. And so there was definitely something going on there. And
So what?
usually with the crop circles or crop formations, I should say, it generally wasn't the like the really pretty ones, like, here's a spider and an
Yeah,
hourglass and blah blah blah.
yeah.
It was usually just this looked like somebody spilled something on the crops,
Huh.
and but those tended to be the more interesting ones.
Huh. So do you have any theory on what might be behind the crop circles? Because I know they happen all over the world. Um, do you think that the majority of them are legit and possibly UFOs creating them?
I think very small minority are legitimate.
Okay,
I
okay.
think there are a lot of tremendous artists out there that are obviously able to quickly create these things, and there are some people that admit to creating them. Sometimes they're hoaxing and they're not actually creating them, but other
Yeah,
people do actually create them. But for the ones that are strangely shaped, has certainly been cases where people have seen a UFO around these. I forget the exact details. It was a young boy and girl somewhere in New York. I remember they saw a 30-foot craft over some crops and watched the creation of a crop circle. Um, a lot of times, if you see a video of a light going over, somebody said, "Oh my gosh, look, this orb is creating this crops." That's fake. Those
I
are
got
fake.
you.
But otherwise, you know, it's a little outside my lane, but I think some sort of strange energy that's inexplicable is creating them. I don't know if there's any intelligence necessarily behind it, because again, to me, it's all the weird sort of splotches that tend to be the ones that give off the strange readings,
That's
not the nicely cut ones.
that's interesting. That's interesting. I wonder, I just wonder what the reason for that is, but I know there's got to be a reason behind it. Um, but so do you guys often get encounters from people where they actually encounter a being? Do you guys get
Yes.
many reports on that?
Yes, certainly do. It's currently called within MUFON the Experiencer Resource Team. Um, and I'll just go with the idea that your audience is fairly cryptid based. And so some of this
Yes.
UFO lingo I'm using, I'm going to explain. So back in the 80s and 90s, where the cases really started to come out of the woodwork of people having contact. Contact typically, for the most part, was with little gray beings with giant black eyes. There's some variety. There's reptilian-looking beings, mantis-looking beings, some beautiful Nordic, as they tend to be called, and you could go on. You could go off to the races from there. But the term abductee was seen by many people as possibly victim based, or people would say, "I had an encounter, but I wasn't taken up into a UFO." Let's say I just saw them, so it wasn't really an abduction.
Hmm.
So the term contactee, back in the 50s and 60s primarily, meant somebody who pretty much for the most part made up some story about flying to Venus with Jesus, that type of stuff. So
Yeah.
that term had some baggage to it. So I don't know who came up originally coined the term experiencer, but that kind of stuck to the community. And so experiencer resource means that as a resource, we are there to listen to people's accounts. What can you do? So, I mean, we do some research, but the biggest thing that we can do is listen to people and listen to their accounts. And um, it's more on the ledger of just hearing people out rather than investigating. The thing about, say, like the cryptid phenomenon or ghosts is that if there's an area where there's been some sightings, you send your investigators there to look into it. But UFOs, their purview is the whole sky. So if you
Yeah.
see have a really good UFO sighting one night, that may be it for the next 100 years or something like that. Or if somebody has an encounter with a being, you really can't camp out there because odds are those beings aren't coming. But the phenomena, a couple big things about the contact phenomena is that people who have this type of experience tend to have several experiences. It's rare to have somebody just have a one off. And if they are having a one off, that usually means that they're with somebody who has a
Yeah.
pattern of having these type of encounters. As sort of a inside vernacular, kind of funny, the term frequent flyer is sometimes used.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody who's been taken or contacted a lot. And the phenomenon now has taken an interesting turn because along with the people who say I was physically taken, I was missing for 2 hours, nobody could find me, I have a scar, that sort of very visceral part of the phenomena. There are now people that have channeling sessions or this sort of trans mediumship where they say, yes, we are also experiencers, like the people who get dragged out of bed and stripped naked and have something stuck in their ear. So it makes for some interesting conversations sometimes between these two groups, both sort of claiming the same moniker of an experiencer. And the other big thing I think I want to mention about this is that I got into MUFON because of my own personal experiences, not just because of what I witnessed in the sky, but I've also had contact. I'm also a frequent flyer. And so
Okay.
I fall in that category of being taken aboard and having very physical stuff happen to me. And yeah, my very first memory from age 2 is a little gray guy coming into my room. Um, yeah, people say, "Oh,
Wow.
what's your first memory?" "Oh, I'm playing with a dog," or "My
Yeah.
parents and I'm walking on the beach." Like, no, no, not me. So,
So
um,
my first one was getting scared by a spider. Your first one was getting scared by an alien.
mhm.
Wow.
and
That's
and this memory of age 3, which I think is my next remembered memory, is not much better. I almost fell into Niagara Falls, so that was
you
another one
almost
that's
fell into Niagara Falls
yeah. We
without
were
the
on the
barrel.
Oh, I don't know if that would have helped me. But so we were on the Canadian side, and there was a stone wall there. And I have a brother who's 11 years older than me. And so again, I'm 3. He tries to pick me up to put me on the wall, but it slips. And so I go over the side, and then he grabs me and pulls me back up. And the funny thing is that my parents didn't see it, and I have other brothers. I don't think anybody else saw it. And he was like, "You're not going to scream." He had this look like, "You're not going to scream or cry or anything." Like, so
Oh man.
yeah. So
Oh,
I mean, life's
so
been good. Life's been
yeah.
good, except
Well,
I have some very interesting formative memories.
so I've had a couple ladies on here that have been contactees, abductees, whatever word you want to use. Their encounters are just out. They blow my mind and scare me to death at the same time.
Hmm.
Um, the one lady, she was like very at peace with what was happening to her, and not that she wanted it to happen, but she was at peace with it because there was nothing she could do about it. The other lady was kind of like on the other end of the spectrum. She didn't want it to be happening, and she was ticked off that there was nothing she could do about it. So you, in your case, are you more on the? I would imagine just by your demeanor and everything that you're probably like okay with it, or maybe not okay, but you just letting it go.
Yeah. Now, first off, I'll say your description of the two women that you had on your show reminds me of an SNL skit. I don't know if you ever saw the Saturday Night Live, where it's a recurring skit too, that they haven't had one in a long time, where they would have these three witnesses who were taken aboard a UFO, and the first two would talk about peace, love, and light experience. And the third one was like, that wasn't my experience. They're really good, and I could really relate. I can talk about it because I have been talking about it my whole life. It doesn't mean that the encounters were necessarily easy some of the times.
Yeah.
But like, for example, in my teen years, when I was being taken several times, sometimes more than once in a week, I would, I would do everything I could to try to stay up all night. I turned my room into an obstacle course. Like right next to the door was a big dresser drawer thingy, and I put a snare drum stick in it so that the door would only open so far. I had a fan blowing on me, so even if I closed my eyes, I could detect if something blocked that flow of air. The lights would be on, and either the radio or the TV would be on. I would have the window shades drawn so that nobody could recon the room, and just clutter all over the floor, that sort of thing. It never worked. Didn't make any difference, not a lick of difference. But so a lot of it's been scary, and I think it's just the cathartic thing about talking about it openly has been helpful. I remember I was on a show several years ago. It was a British show, and the women are like, like it's hard to believe you went through any sort of trauma the way you described it so casually. And my response was like, Travis Walton. Do you know who Travis Walton is?
Oh yes, I do. Yeah, Fire in the Sky.
Yeah. So 1975, he was abducted for 5 days, and he's still on the talking circuit about it. And when he talks, he tells it pretty much as it happened. He doesn't get emotional every time he talks about it, because how many hundreds, maybe even 1,000+ times has he talked about it?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of being able to talk about it means that it can help process all the strange things you feel about it. And for me, since it's been in my life, my whole life, I don't know anything different. I wouldn't recognize myself if I recognize a person that wasn't taken at age 2, 4, 7, 9, 10, a bunch of times in my teens and 20s, and intermittently ever since.
So are there any of your encounters that stick out in your mind that you wouldn't mind sharing? Or
yeah, there's a couple key ones that definitely I think sort of point to the nature of the phenomena. One was when I was age 7. I was laying in bed, and this black circle opened up in the ceiling above me, and this metal sort of looked like a rope or something like that dropped out and started whipping around really quickly, and it started shooting off sparks, and I had this sort of feeling like I was being sucked up, and then I sort of blacked out into awareness in a small room, and it had some kind of light in it that was similar to a black light. And there were 2 little gray guys in there, about 3 feet tall, the giant black wraparound eyes. And then they led me into another room where there was a big slab in the middle of the room that I understood to be a bed. And now there's 3 of these little guys in this sort of doctor's office style room. And the 2 little gray guys, they go through a door on their left, on the left. So I'm like, okay, there's a door on the right. I'm going to go through that door. I don't know. They left me alone for whatever reason. I don't know what, they probably thought a 7-year-old wasn't going to be able to do much.
Yeah.
So, so I went through the other door and I was in a hallway. It was winding. And so I sort of followed around this sort of curvature. And then I got to the end and it was a dead end. And when I looked back, I saw them, the three beings just sort of standing there casually watching me, like as if they were like, oh, okay, he got out. That's fine. Let's see what he does. We got this, so that's fine.
Yeah.
So they led me into a room that, and this time there was a complicated chair, a complex sort of chair in there, reminded me of a dentist's chair. And so they led me to it, had me sit in it. When I sat in it, I felt magnetically attached to the chair. Any straps or anything like that, but somehow I was stuck in the chair. And there was a slightly taller being, about 5 feet tall, in there. And he had definitely the feeling of a doctor, whereas these little guys were just sort of assistants, minions, whatever. And the taller being looked just like him, except was a couple feet taller. He gets right in my face with these giant eyes, and he says, "Be really good, and you'll get to see the color blue." And I'm like, "That's weird," like no sucker or stickers, like.
So but was that like projected into your mind?
Yeah, it was telepathic.
Okay. Yeah, that's usually how I think they.
So
sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no problem. But speaking of cutting, so then I noticed this cut mark on the top of my right arm. I still have the scar. It doesn't show up very well, but and I look and I see blood coming out. I'm like, well, that's weird. And then as I'm watching, I see it heal up right as I'm looking at it.
Really?
I didn't see what caused the incision. I don't know why it was healing. And so then I looked up, like, what the heck, at this being, and he puts his face right back in mine again, and his eyes change from black to this very bright colored blue. And then I got hit with this sort of tranquilizing effect. And so then I slipped into sleep, and I woke up the next day with this scar, and I went around asking all the family members. I'm like, how is it that I got this scar in my sleep? And everyone's like, I don't know, Even my parents said they'd never seen it before. So, so then the story's not done. So,
okay, good.
So later that day,
I mean, good for us, not for you.
Suffer for your whatever. Yep. So I'm in the back with my friend. He's 6 and I'm 7 again. So we're climbing trees in my backyard, and this mist then rolls into the backyard. At first I thought it was smoke, and I'm like, oh my gosh, something's on fire. But as it reached us, me and my friend, it had this cool effect. It was kind of like fog machine smoke. And then I couldn't see my friend anymore, but this little gray guy comes walking in the mist, comes up to me and asks me if I'm all right. I said, yeah, I'm fine. It says, oh, good, basically telepathically, and then keeps walking, and this mist follows it out, and it goes into the neighbor's backyard, and then you just see this cloud kind of go around the neighbor's house. And my friend, whom I still keep in loose contact, says, yeah, he remembers that he didn't see the being in the mist, but he did remember that it was really weird how this cloud rolled through the backyard.
Wow.
So to me, yeah, that was one of the memorable ones. And then there's another one, and just quick plug, I wrote books about my experiences. They're called Experiencer. As long as you know how to find my last name, it's pretty easy to find on wherever you get your books. So
the name of your book is Experiencer?
Yeah, the first one is Experiencer Raised in Two Worlds, which is about growing up in this sort of environment. And then I have a second book called Experiencer Two Worlds Collide, which is about my 20s. And the books have a very sort of different tone to them, because when I was young, first of all, they started to be friendly to me when I was really little. Then they dropped all the pretense of friendliness, and I became essentially a lab rat. But in my 20s, there was an interesting sort of give and take with them um, that me and the beings developed, and it could get kind of complicated to really explain in depth, but they had a real interest, and this is not unusual for me. They had a real interest in who would be my partner, where I would live, where I would work, all these little aspects of my life. And so this girl that I was dating in '95, she and I went on to this park one day, and it had some trails, and then um, it started to get dark, and so we just found a hill to watch the sunset, and then we were still there, and so like, oh, we might as well stick around and stargaze. And when you are in a relationship, if this type of phenomena happens to you, and you're in a relationship or a close friendship, anywhere where you're around another person for long enough, at some point in time, they're going to be around when one of these experiences happen. So she and I had only been dating about 2 months at the time, and I did not want to, uh, like, hey, it's our first day. Guess what? I get taken by aliens. It's
Yeah.
not a great tactic.
Yeah, not a
But
great opening line.
yeah, but so you want to, show how grounded you are and this and that, and get things rolling, and then at some point, um, bring it up so that they're not sucker punched when something happens. So apparently, in this case, I did not bring it up to her soon enough. So we're out there on the hill, and it's dark, and it went silent. And I'm just going to give sort of the edited version of this because it gets pretty weird. But um,
Oh, you can get
we
weird if you want.
it's just it's hard to explain, but I'll do my best to give
Okay.
the weird version of it, because
All
it's
right.
weird enough on its own without adding extra stuff. But so we're up on the hill, and we're laying on the blanket, we're smooching, and then the sound of the woods just stopped suddenly. It was May. There were a lot of frogs, very vocal frogs around us, and little sounds of branches dropping off trees and things like that. And it went dead silent. And then you could hear the sounds of somebody walking up the hill. Sounded like a person, step, 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 just like you would think a person would sound. So we got up and we walked to the center of the hill, and we're looking around. We don't see anything. And then, sort of to calm things down, we're like, let's just start some banter up. So she points up at the sky and says, "Hey, look, it's the Big Dipper." And I said, "Well, actually, that's the Little Dipper. I know because I had this astronomy class just recently in college, and then we started talking about the price of textbooks, and then we felt sort of relaxed, and we went and we laid down again, and then suddenly the noises of the forest stopped, and you heard this sound of footsteps coming up the hill. So the difficult part to describe here is I had forgotten at that moment. At that moment, I had forgotten that we had just gotten up to the middle of the hill and had that conversation. So we get up, we go to the sun hill, and she says, "Hey, look, it's the Big Dipper." And I say, "Oh, it's a Little Dipper." And we start talking about textbooks. And I'm having this weird feeling of deja vu,
Yeah.
but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And so then we go back to the blanket, and then the sounds of the forest stop. And then you heard the sound of footsteps coming up the hill again. We did. And we went to the center of the hill, and she says, "Hey, look, it's the Big Dipper."
Big Dipper.
And it was at that moment that it hit me. I'm like, wait a second. We not only just had this conversation, but we had this conversation at least twice. So that's
Yeah.
when it really hit me. And then
Yeah.
we were suddenly paralyzed, and I
Both
could
of
move my
you?
eyes. Yeah. Uh, we're standing up, we're paralyzed at the center of this hill in this park, completely isolated. And yeah, three little gray guys up the hill, and they walk directly to her.
Hmm.
They don't seem to pay me much attention at all. and I could hear their telepathic banter, and they're saying, "No, not her. She's not the one. She's no good." Uh, and I'm like, "Oh man!" And so then they walked off, and then we could move again. We ran for, I swear, it was at least over a quarter of a mile to get to where the car was, and we just ran it straight and got in the car, and we were completely silent on the way drive back home. Didn't say anything to each other, just drove back in complete quiet. And then when we got close to home, he says, "Don't drop me off yet. I'm not ready to go home yet." So we went to Meyer. It's a big box store if it's where somebody lives. Imagine like a Walmart.
Hey,
You know, so,
the last person I interviewed talked about the Meyer stores like a Walmart.
no,
Not
yeah,
even joking. All right.
it's a theme.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was open 24 hours, and we go in, and we're just like picking up mops, picture frames, touching staplers. Just it had a really grounding effect, like in normalcy, to be
Yeah.
able to just go through this brightly lit place, surrounded by people, touching familiar things. And then we ended up they had a pet aisle at the time with hamsters, and hamsters being nocturnal, they were up and doing their thing. And so we're sitting in the aisle, we're just kind of watching the hamsters for a while. And then she said, "Okay, I think I can go home now." So we go to the car. Again, we're not talking at all. That was the extent of our whole conversation. And so we got in the car. I dropped her off at home, and then we didn't talk at all the next day. And then the day after that, she called and asked me to come over, and then she broke up with me.
Oh
And
no.
yeah. And while I didn't say that what had happened had anything to do with me, it was obvious that what had happened had everything to do with me.
So and she realized what happened.
Oh yeah, I mean she was
Okay.
standing there, she could see him, I'm
Yeah.
sure too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like some people realize it's happening to them and some people don't. Like
Mm-hmm.
the one lady I interviewed, I don't know if her mind was doing it to protect her or what, but she ended up later in life going to a the, when they regress you.
Like a hypnotherapist or
Yeah, that's it.
a
Yeah,
regressionist or
yeah, and that's how. And then once she did that, then she started her her memories started coming back to herself, and then she could start remembering more. Um, so I didn't know if possibly, but it sounds like you both experienced it and you both remembered it. That'd be
mhm.
scary. I don't think I'd went out on another date with you either.
So we so I did go through a series of regressions when I first joined MUFON, and it sort of
Yeah,
added a little meat to the bones, but I mean, I didn't come up with altogether brand new things that I didn't remember to at
I
least to
got
some
you.
degree already.
So do you think there's any criteria and maybe you got even if you have a theory on it, I'm curious about who gets taken, who doesn't, because like you said earlier, it seems like the people that get taken, they keep taking.
Hmm.
The people that don't, they just don't mess with. Do you think there's any reason why they pick and choose like that?
Yeah, so I think the main thing is if you treat it like and maybe this is an awkward analogy, but as a disease, okay, you can get it genetically. If your parents have had it happen, there's a strong chance that you'll have it happen. It runs in my mom's side of the family, so that's where I got it. You can also catch it from someone else in the type of the scenario where I mentioned if you're around somebody long enough who's had this happen, it can start happening to you if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then also, if I know of two cases of this where somebody who had a lot of experiences moved out of a house and the experiences continued at that house after they left.
Oh, to the next person?
Yeah, the new homeowners expressed to them that something was going on.
Holy
Yeah.
cow. That's
Hmm.
scary. So the girl that was with you that day, I don't know how much you ever talked after the fact, even though she broke up with you, but do you know if she
No,
ever had another experience? Don't
I
know.
I don't know, and I've often wondered. And
Yeah.
she's seemingly accessible. I think she still lives in southeastern Michigan, as I do. She's a friend of a friend, so uh, if something dramatic happened in her life, I think they would probably say, "Hey, you know."
Yeah.
Uh, but
Hey.
but no, I have not talked to her and haven't heard whether or not
Okay.
she's.
I was just curious.
And
Um,
and I'm fairly vocal about this, so I think if she's interested and she hears me talk about it, and if she wants to reach out to me, I'll have that conversation. But I don't want to drag her into anything that she's not ready
I
for.
I understand that. I can respect that too. That's good. Um, so and then something else that sincerely intrigues me about the whole UFO alien thing is the types. Um, because there seems to be so many different types. Like you said, the reptilian. I've heard of
Hmm.
like praying mantis type, the Nordic. Um, are those? I mean, obviously, you probably don't have the rock solid answer on it, but I'm sure you have opinions. Do you
Hmm.
think those different types work together, or are they just cordial with each other, or do you think maybe they're just like like we are on Earth, like pew, 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 get out of my territory type thing?
In my personal experience, I'll start with that. I can
Okay.
talk to the part that I've experienced. So I met a mantis being once, um, and it was in my teen years, the time where I had the obstacle course up, and I was being very difficult with them. And
Yeah.
so they brought me to, in my teen analogy, like it was bringing me to see the principal of the
Got you.
school, and to put a scare into me. And yeah, this being was about 7 foot tall, looked like a praying mantis in some gaudy robe, and yeah, it had this really intense energy about it. Now, a lot of people could say this is a dark energy, but I can only say that it was a very really intense energy, and it was off-putting just based on the intensity of it. And it said, you are not going along with the program. You should go along with the program. If you go along with things, then you'll see the benefit of it. And while it was scary, I don't know that it had much of an effect on me. I was still resistant to them, particularly at that age. So, in my perspective, from my own experiences, that the little grays are like the blue collar workers, the taller grays are the white collar workers, and the mantises are management. And what I think is interesting too is before I'd heard anybody else, um, when I was having these experiences, there was not real context in my life to put these things. I was seeing these things. I mean, the X Files was not on TV.
Yeah.
The Close Encounters didn't quite hit the mark of what these beings were like.
Uh,
So I was particularly surprised when I first read Whitley Strieber's infamous book on abductions, Communion, that he not only saw the mantis being, but he also called them mantises. I'm like, oh, that's weird because that was my name for them. Then it would go on that everybody would call them that. But I think that I, speaking of the research that I've done, the people I've spoken to, being in a community, it seems like the reptilians and the Nordics sort of work together to some degree. In Travis Walton experience that I mentioned earlier,
yeah.
there were little gray beings and a Nordic, so there's a connection there. And many people have seen reptilians along with the grays. I've never seen a reptilian. I do have a funny story though. Two friends of mine that were experiencers. Um,
Hmm.
my one friend, he tended to be taken by the grays, and his girlfriend tended to be taken by reptilian beings. And one night he woke up and saw grays on one corner of the bed and reptilians on the other corner of the bed. And he said that they were looking at each other like, oh, geez, we both showed up at the same time.
What?
Yep, exactly. And they had this
Okay.
sort of embarrassed, weird look at each other, and then they both disappeared.
Okay. You get a gold star for bringing up an actual funny abduction encounter. That's funny.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the people, but still, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, when you don't know whether to freak out or laugh.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Oh, I didn't know it was your night here at the job site. Sorry, I thought we Oh, what a awkward experience. Oh, that's funny. So, man, Bill, it's been a blast talking with you tonight. Is there anything else you want to share before we get ready to wrap it up?
I would say, my usual spiel for MUFON is that if you see a UFO, there's no better place to report it than MUFON. We actually investigate sightings. There are some other places out there where you can report things and they go down a black hole. But, with us, we're real people. We're all volunteer Army. And so we care deeply about the phenomena. And we're well trained, and we'll have that conversation if you have an experience, even if it's something that's not recent. We enjoy historical stuff, and if you want to investigate UFOs, there's no better place to do it than to join MUFON. And a lot of state chapters, like Michigan, have state meetings, and so you can find out about it by looking up your state chapter. You can go to MUFON.com to find a website for your state chapter.
Okay. And we talked about your books earlier, and you said all they really got to do with it on Amazon and just look
Amazon,
up your name.
Barnes and Noble, Walmart.
Okay. Is there anything else besides that, like a site or a page or anything you want to promote before we get off here?
I have a personal site about my experiences, which is experiencer.me, but I haven't updated it in a while. But otherwise, just if anybody wants to get in contact with me directly to talk about their strange upfront experiences, I'm an easy to just go to any of the MUFON sites and there's my contact info. Awesome. Or I'm on Facebook, of course, too.
Yeah. Hey, that's where I caught up with you. So just check them out. Check them out, people. All right. Well, Bill, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It was a blast talking to you. And you taught me a couple new things, which I love learning. So thank you, Bill. And everybody out there in Cryptid Land, keep it creepy.
Yeah, out in the woods where the shadows creep, I'm trying to find the legend that the people keep. Bigfoot's the name, got a story to tell. Footprints in the mud, can't you hear the bell? Whispers in the night, can you feel that chill? Bigfoot on the run, he's a legend, keep it real. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride. Like I'm on a quest, searching for the homie, you know he's the best. Got my camera ready, heightened senses on blast. Snap a shot of Sasquatch, legend unsurpassed. Eyes in the dark, you can't catch what you can't see. King of the woods, living wild and free. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride.